Today we will look at the history of Islamic women, aided by the many direct interviews of Geraldine Brooks in her book 9 Parts of Desire. The value of this book derives from how Brooks is able to give an insider look at the Islamic women that are typically forced into the shadows, while also taking a historical view of the subject. Brooks attempts to find women in current-day situations that are demonstrating the positive messages from Muhammad's first community in Medina. She instead continually finds that women who attempt to fight against the male leadership are instead marginalized, excluded, and put down. I'm your host, Miller Purple, and welcome to Crash Course World History. The irony in the position of women in Islam today is that Muhammad's wives were very involved and had power, unlike Muslim women today. His first wife, Khadija, was an influential, wealthy businesswoman, something hardly ever seen in Islamic society today. For more talk on Muhammad, let's turn to camera 2. Oh hey, camera 2. While Muhammad is infamously known for his polygamous lifestyle, he had positive intentions in taking multiple wives. He wanted to help out widows, create connections between families, and spread his revelations to others. However, it is undeniable that his revelations seem to come in a very timely and advantageous manner. For more on these revelations, we need to go to the thought bubble. What's that, Justin? We don't have enough money in the budget for a thought bubble. We don't have a budget. I guess we're just going to do a PowerPoint.
Muhammad declared that men are in charge of women because men spend their money and own the property that supports them.
This would have been an ironic revelation for Muhammad to hear during the life of his first wife, because she had far more money than him and was supporting the family.
Gabriel, what am I to do with all these widows left after battle?
Marry the women who seem good to you, up to 4, as long as you can do justice to all of them.
This was later followed by another revelation that exempted Muhammad from the 4-wife rule. He married 12 wives in total.
Gabriel, all these wives together in my house are causing me great problems and distress. What am I to do?
If it is fitting, then seclude your wives.
Whatever you may think about Muhammad, one thing you must accept is that the women in his original Muslim community had far more power and freedom than many women in Islamic society today. Muhammad set an admirable example by treating all of his wives with great respect and dignity. Through Brooks' several interviews, we are able to see both sides of Islam, the severe oppression of women as well as the many very content wives. One ancient practice that is still continued today is honor killings, where as punishment for extramarital sex, the daughter is killed by her family to restore honor. To this day, about 40 of these occur a year in rural communities in Palestine. These ridiculous practices are also accompanied by a justice system that requires 4 male witnesses because women only count as half a witness. So it is very difficult to convict males on charges such as fornication and rape. This results in vastly more severe consequences for female extramarital sex than male. One problem in the past is that women lack the ability to read the Quran and know what it actually says. They had to rely on men above them to read it to them, which is comparable to those in Europe who had to rely on the clergy to interpret the Bible for them prior to the 1600s. The easiest remedy to this is by educating women so that they can read the Quran for themselves, and that is what some Middle Eastern countries have attempted to do. According to Brooks, one example of changing Middle Eastern social structure is women's education in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's first girls' school was opened by Queen Ifat, whose background was the much more advanced and Western-based Turkey. She argued that since the Quran puts the equal obligations on men and women, that women should be able to read the Quran for themselves. In 1963, men rioted at the first opening of a girls' school, as they feared that if you let the camel's nose into the tent, eventually its whole body will take up all the room. It was very hard to make progress, as by 1980, only 55% were enrolled in primary school and only 38% were literate. As a result of internal conflict, some women went abroad to the American University of Beirut, a very progressive school that gave women increased opportunity for secondary education, as well as letting them mingle with men, but it was met with opposition from extremists who disliked the education of women, and the American name it bore. This was in stark contrast to the Islamic University of Gaza, which was divided down the middle, splitting men and women. Here Brooks talked to Ahmad Sadi, a high official at Gaza, about the education of women. He was greeted rudely by Sadi, who refused a polite handshake because it's better to stab your hand than touch another woman's hand. When asked about co-education, he angrily said, "Co-education is prevented in Islam. We know the disastrous results, especially for young girls." When asked about politics, he said, "Women can't lead because their voices is too arousing." This opposition toward the West and their concept of co-education are also seen later as Brooks talks about a school that begins each morning with the chant of "Death to America." Mr. Purple, so you're telling me that all Muslim women are extremely oppressed and they all hate America? No. Like many Americans, you are very ignorant. It is only a minority of extremists who hate America, and most women are very content and happy with their lives. While Islamic women are oppressed, much of this is due to the misinterpretation of the Quran, which can happen because Arabic is very vague language or people don't really know what it says. The reality is that majority of Muslim women are very happy and treated well by their husbands. With more on this, it's time for the open interview with the author Geraldine Brooks. Welcome to the open conversation with the 9 Parts of Desire author Geraldine Brooks. Can you give us some background information about yourself?
Yes, I'm from Australia, and when I went to the Middle East, it was to do investigative reporting, but it's really hard to talk to the men of the Middle East because they're not allowed to talk to other women outside of their family because women are considered so arousing that they're not allowed to talk to them. So the only people I can talk to is women. So I decided that if I can't really get a good look at the men, then I'll just look at the women instead and provide people an inside view of how the women live in Muslim countries.
So Geraldine, why did you write this book?
Well, I felt that all Westerners ever really hear about is the bad things from the radical extremist Muslims. But there's really 2 sides to those issues. And while we hear about that some women are very oppressed in Middle Eastern countries, a lot of them are still very content and happy with their lives. If you look at the Ayatollah Khomeini, who was despised by the United States while he led the Iranian Revolution, even though the United States didn't like him at all, his widow said that he was still a very kind and humble husband to her.
While us Americans tend to focus on the most horrendous situations found in the Middle East, can you give some examples of experiences that you've had in first-hand contact with them?
I've seen lots of different situations in my experiences, and it seems to me that because in Islam the man has so much power that how content his wife is really depends on the husband's desire to please his wife and make her happy, because the husband has such great power. If he doesn't really care about his wife's happiness, then it's going to be very difficult for her to be happy because the husband basically has nearly absolute power over her. And I've seen different ways that can play out. With Rameh, she was married away at 15 years old to someone she never met before, and later her husband met a new wife that he liked more, so Rameh was basically left as just his number 2 wife, and she just watches after the kids all day. And then another woman, Rahab, her husband left her for another wife just because she couldn't provide him with a son, which is a little bit counterintuitive if you look at their religion, because Muhammad, their main example, he didn't have any sons. They died at a young age. So Muhammad had all daughters, but today Muslim people don't want to follow that. And then another girl, Janet, she was from the West, but she converted to Islam and her family accepted her, and she said they treated her like a queen there, and she became very happy. And she said that she preferred Islam society over America because there was such a big emphasis on family, even before other things like their work, unlike America.
Brooks might not be able to fully understand Muslims because she's an Australian Jew, and she could possibly misinterpret the content of people's interviews. We really thank her for the perspective she gave us in her appearance on today's show. Now it's time to go to Logan Thomas for his open letter.
Graceful. Hi, I'm Logan, and this is an open letter to the United States of America. Dear America, us at Crash Course think that the most vital aspect of studying history is being as fair as possible. And in America, we tend to lack that in our attitude towards Muslims. While we have a right to harbor some anger against them because of past terrorist attacks, Middle Eastern countries also have a right to be defensive towards us because they see us as intervening unnecessarily and unfairly, particularly when it comes to our aid towards the highly contested Israel. There is also angry feeling that still remains from the Iranian Revolution, where the U.S. opposed Ayatollah Khomeini's isolation of Western ideas and returned to the fundamental Islam, despite him being well liked by the majority of the people in Iran. With these prominent examples as well as many others, it is not surprising why the tension between the USA and the Middle East is so high. And although there is a portion of Islamic followers who would chant "Death to America" every morning, the majority of Muslims are very peaceful. The same goes in regards to women. While there are some brutally oppressed, the majority are treated well by their husbands and are content with their lives. And that is what to remember when studying history. We should try to see both sides of an issue and not have our views of an entire group of people be affected by a few extremists. Thanks for watching Cross Course World History.
Although Brooks might not be able to fully understand Muslims because she is an Australian Jew, and she could...
And Ramia was relegated to the shadows, where she cared about the children and diligently went about her work as an afterthought of her husband. There you go. And in America, we tend to lack that in our attitude towards... Oh my god.
Logan, cut!
In America, we tend to lack that in our attitude towards Muslims. And God, I was doing so good.
Crash Course with History is brought to you by Chicken and Biscuit Crackers.